Hi everyone, this is Hardy. In this lecture we will discuss atmospheric perspective. This concept is part of depth and scale, but since it's possibly my favorite tool for creating the illusion of depth, and because it's so powerful, it deserves its own dedicated video. So, atmospheric perspective. This is where we put darker objects with higher contrast in the foreground, and we put lighter objects with less contrast in the distance. Simply put, things get lighter as they get farther away because there is more air, or atmosphere, between the viewer's eye and the distant object. This is an incredibly powerful tool to give your images a sense of depth and distance. Let me show you a quick exercise to demonstrate this concept. I've set up a layered file with some black silhouettes of some landscape features. These are split up into 4 levels of depth. A foreground showing some trees close up with a lot of fine detail. A near middle showing trees and the forest floor slightly farther back. A far middle showing a rolling hill with treetops, and finally a far distance showing a mountain with only vague outlines of trees lining its contour. Now, when we make all of these layers visible, even though everything is black, because of the different scale, we can sort of tell which objects are closer and which are farther away in the distance, but we're going to make this depth effect much more powerful by using value to give the image atmospheric perspective. Let's start with our far distance layer. I'm going to hit Command U to do a hue saturation adjustment. I'll adjust the lightness of this layer so that it's a pretty high value, a very light gray, almost white. Next, I'll do a similar adjustment to the far middle layer, the rolling tree-lined hill. This time I won't lighten it quite so much. I want it to be a few steps darker than the mountain in the distance. You can probably already see where I'm going with this. I'll do one more adjustment to the near middle layer so that it is a dark gray distinct from the black we'll leave on the foreground layer. Isn't that amazing how deep and interesting this image suddenly looks? All because we've used value to give it atmospheric perspective. In fact, even though this image is only silhouettes with absolutely no interior rendering on any of the forms, it practically has a sense of being an entirely believable, realized landscape. That's how powerful atmospheric perspective and silhouettes can be when defining your environment painting. Let's check out a really beautiful video game that makes great use of this concept. It's a platformer that came out a while back called Limbo by Playdead. This entire game is black and white and uses nothing but silhouettes and atmospheric perspective. Check out how descriptive and rich and beautiful all of these environments look. They're amazing. Use this concept to give your environments, either natural landscapes or vast cities, incredible depth and interest with this one simple trick. Let's jump back to our exercise and take this one small step further before we finish up. I'm going to create a few layers in between the ones that we already have. Let's name each one of these new layers Mist. Now, with a soft round brush, I'm going to very subtly paint in some soft glows to spaces between our landscape layers. This will look like mist settling in the low points of our landscape. Now, it doesn't have to look like a super foggy day, but if you add this effect with some subtlety, if you give just small hints of thicker air or atmosphere in these spaces between the layers of landscape, it becomes very natural looking and starts making the three-dimensional space even more tangible and believable. We can also add some bloom effects as if the sun were shining through the tree branches. You can even apply a subtle Gaussian blur filter to your foreground layer to give it a really cool depth of field effect. Feel free to download this layered file if you'd like to play with adjusting the lightness of each layer and perhaps give some practice to painting the mist in the spaces between. I've also worked up a cityscape version of this exact same concept. The principles and techniques are identical, and you can see how the illusion of depth and scale is just as powerful regardless of the subject or setting. These are a lot of fun to create, and they take very little time since you don't have to worry about any interior rendering, so take a crack at creating your own. I hope you found this principle helpful. It's really one of my favorites, and I think you're really going to love using it in our course projects later on.